Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss another room on TryHackMe, and it's called OWASP Top 10 OWASP Top 10 2025, and we are gonna discuss IAAA failures. What are these? And we are going to walk through the theory and real exploitation techniques so you can understand these vulnerabilities and how attackers might exploit them. So let's start with the basic introduction. What exactly is this OWASP? Sorry if I pronounce it wrong, but it basically stands for Open Web Application Security Project, and it publishes the top 10 list every few years to highlight the most critical web application vulnerabilities. And we are going to discuss the 2025 edition that still includes really classic issues, for example like broken access control or even some kind of injections. And it emphasizes, really tells what are the modern concerns in the software and what vulnerabilities could be arised on this and what should be looked for when we are doing penetration testing or we are doing bug bounty hunting. So this room is divided into 3 categories, and the first one is IAAA failures of this, and I'm gonna try to cover all 3. So they basically IAAA here is I stands for identity, and A stands for authentication, and another A stands for authorization, and the third A stands for accountability. So the severities of these vulnerabilities in the top tier list generated by this Open Web Application Security Project is given the ranking from 1 to 10 each year. So here the naming mechanism works as such that A01 is basically annual 01. So this framework began after 2020 and is 2021. So the one here stands for annual 2021. The most severe was broken access control, and it's continuing as such. And then A07 stands for it continued for 2017. It was like authentication failure that was the most abused vulnerability in the annual year of 2017. And the 2021 it was founded, this Open Web Application Security Project, and since then it is being continued. So we are here, the 01 might be for 2021, the 02 might be for 2022, till we get the 2025 tier list, which would be 05. But the naming mechanism is not the primary concern. What is concern is the severity of these vulnerabilities each year. The 2025 tier list has the most regarded vulnerability is broken access control. After that it's authentication failures, and then on the third it's logging and alerting failures. So this room is basically designed for beginners and assumes no previous security knowledge as such. So we are gonna check box this, and let's start with what exactly is the IAAA. I'm gonna try to explain it more simply. It sounds a bit complicated, but it's not. It's just an abbreviation for identity, authentication, authorization, and accountability. So if you let's start with what exactly is identity. So identity is your name, is your real identity. Basically means that what others used to call you, how you are being recognized as such, as a person or as a service. For example, if you are in a cooperative environment or you are in a working environment, then you might be having some role. So your identity here is that particular role. and in the social gathering you have a particular relation with a person who is giving that party. So that is your particular identity. And on the most basic level, identity is basically your name on a government issued ID card that basically identifies you as a person, as that you are just being you, not anyone else. It could be on a real world environment, in a real tech simulated environment. An identity could be a username, could be an email, could be a user ID. For example, on this TryHackMe network, I have this username over here, which is alphabet. So it is my own unique identity, and it cannot be tampered with another person's identity. It belongs to me, and I am recognized as this handle. So identity basically means who you really are. It's a unique identifier to recognize a particular person. And then we have authentication, which really proves that you are just being you. So you are often issued a card in a cooperative environment or in a working environment where that card is used to verify your authenticity, that you are really the intended person for that identity. No one else is trying to fake your identity or trying to personalize that as you. No, you are just, your identity is not being faked, and to prove that we use authentication. And for example, you would use your ID card to enter the building, and on a real world stimulated tech environment, you would enter your password to log in. It would be pins and it would be OTP codes, which basically proves that you are just being you. It proves your identity in a way. And then we have authorization. Authorization means what we are allowed to do. So if you are in a real environment or in a working environment, then authorization means that you are only allowed to do your own particular role. For example, if my role is to check the logs in logs of a system, then I shouldn't have the access for the admin panel. And if I do have access, then it's a broken identity, and my authorization, I'm not authorized to access the admin, but I am being allowed to do I am being faked as an admin. So this is a weak point. So authorization means that you are only doing what your identity is really allowed to do so. And on a website, it means that you are seeing this page that only belongs to you. For example, if I give you a quick example over here, I'm authorized to do so. No one else is authorized to do it as such. So basically, to summarize everything, that accountability means that who did what. Authorization means what are you allowed to do, and authentication proves it's really you, and identity means who you really are. So what happens when the IAAA threat fails is, when these fail, the attackers can view other users' data and act as admins and bypass login protections, or operate without leaving out the logs behind. Accountability, if I really revise you what it is, it's if something goes wrong, accountability really answers who logged in, what did they do, and when did they do what. And authorization means that you are only allowed to see your particular data, and authentication proves it's really you. So on a website, it could be password, pins, or OTP, and identity means your unique identifier, a unique username, an email, or a unique ID. And if any of these are broken, so according to this OWASP top 10, it is abused more often, and it's given to different difficulties. So if I answer this question, what does IAAA stand for? It stands for Identity, Authentication, and Authorization, and accountability. Okay, so let's move to task number 3, which is broken access control, and it's given the name annual 2021, so meaning it was the most abused in the year 2021. So it is the number 1 vulnerability currently in 2025 as well, and considering with a real life analogy, it is like as such you live. For example, broken access control means that basically access is broken, so you are viewing other users data, and even though you don't have access, and it generally is abused by certain parameters or certain paths. The most common occurrence of this is insecure direct object reference, which is the full form of IDOR. IDOR generally occurs by changing unique value, like a unique identifier. For example, in this URL, there are often in the URLs a unique parameter, and we change this value from either, if it's not unique, like it's 7 or 8, we change it to 1 or 2, and we can view other users data. On the back end, we are allowed to view other users data, and meaning the data is broken. So for example, I am having an account ID 1001, and another user has having the account ID 1002, and the website generally only checks that user is logged in and does not check that the user is allowed to access this account personal data. It's not some advanced hacking, no hacking tools, just some changing a number and you are gonna and reveal a lot of sensitive information. You can read private messages, you can view personal details, you can even access the internal data, and sometimes you can even change or delete the information as such. So from the server's perspective, everything's just behaving as normal, and user is just getting its own data, but it's a really sensitive, and that's why it's abused a lot, since it's really basic. Anyone, even a non-technical guy, could exploit this by just changing the value. So in practice, there are 2 types of privilege escalation, such as horizontal and vertical. For example, you can view the person with the same role as you are. For example, I'm a user on TryHackMe, so I can view other users data by changing the value, then it's a horizontal privilege escalation. But if I can view the admin only actions, then it is called vertical privilege escalation. And the application trusts the client too much on this vertical privilege escalation, so it is why it is abused a lot. And there is a static site attached with this as well to demonstrate the severity of this vulnerability of broken access control, how on the back end it's not being validated and we are abusing this vulnerability. So let's see what we are presented with on this site. Let's view. So this looks like a banking application, and we are currently logged in as the user David Wilson, having a balance of $23,450, and there is a side note that vulnerability detected. This application contains an insecure direct object reference vulnerability. By simply changing the ID parameter in the URL, you can access other users' account information without proper authorization checks. And there is an ID parameter. I can see we have been given the value 5 of the user David Wilson, and if we could generally change this value, then it confirms that it's an IDOR. So let's change it to the value 4, and let's see how it behaves and if it is really a vulnerability or not. So if I just give it, so broken access control would be proved if we just give it the value 4, and yes, we can view Emily Davis with the account balance of $5,432, and Since we are accessing without being authenticated with the same role, so it is a horizontal privilege escalation. Let's try free. We are given Michael Brown to Sarah Johnson, and on the ID of 1 we are given John Smith having the balance of $12,450. So this proves us the broken access control. We are viewing users data without being authenticated, and we are just changing the value from different. So let's jump into the question. If you don't get access to more roles but you can view the data of another users, what type of privilege escalation is this? Horizontal privilege escalation. We are going to submit this. And then we have another question. What is the note you found when you are viewing the user's account who had more than $1 million? So let's change the value from 0 to 1. So we are given John Smith, Sarah Johnson, Michael Brown, Emily Davis, David Wilson, Jessica Meyer, having the account balance of over 1 million, and we have flagged. We are going to submit. So with that, we completed our task number 3, and we successfully proved the broken access control as well, and that generally changing the ID value, we were able to get the user sensitive data, and we were able to see its account balance. And this was really a well developed app to demonstrate this insecure direct object reference vulnerability. And so then we have authentication failure having A07. So it was most exploited in 2017. So authentication failures happen generally when an application can't reliably verify or it trusts the users blindly. For example, anyone could persuade as the user admin just by registering as the user admin, and there is some weak guessable password or no rate limit. So due to that, it led to authentication failures, or there's logic flaws, like there's some particular session cookie that was being used. At the most core level, it is like you just say that you are admin, and on the back end it isn't verified as such that you are really the admin, either by spoofing or by any other legitimate purposes. You were able to bypass that check of authentication for a particular user. And in real world application, authentication failures generally happen because of weak password rules, or no account lockout, or poor session handling, or as such that due to logic mistakes in how usernames are checked. So authentication failures could also be due to JSON web token forging, or what mechanism is being used for storing out a particular session value. And if it's quite guessable, for example in the JSON web tokens, if you don't know, it could be just generated again if we knew the particular secret. And if it is abused for example, if we are given the client side that particular secret, then we could generate our own unique JSON web token, and our own particular, using our own session cookie, we can generate the admin users token and thus verify so as an admin, and it's an authentication failure. So let's view this lab. So it looks like a TryHackMe login. So let's try to log in as the user ADMIN and see how the application behaves. So we are changing the capital D and capital N, and let's give the password of admin and admin. Let's register. So password don't match. Let's give admin, and yes, so we changed capital first and capital D and capital N. And let's try to log in with the user A capital D and small m and I and capital N. Okay, so the credentials were admin. Yeah, so sorry. So admin, and with that we abused, and we were able to log in as an admin, and admin was having a balance of $1 million. So we have our unique flag over here, and this proves that the authentication failure, the admin username not being verified on the back end. So it could be either due to poor session handling, either due to poor username management and poor user name choice as well, because admin username is really not predictable, and we were able to enter into the application as user admin. So I'm gonna get this flag, and we were able to successfully authenticate as the user admin too. So let's give this flag, and let's just move to the task number 5. So now we have A09 logging and alerting failures. So it was most abused in the 2019, so it's given A09, and it's third as for in 2025. So far what we have seen is how users can access things they shouldn't, and how attackers can log in as admins without really hacking up the passwords. So now a nice question comes into our mind, that can anyone even notice when this happens, like you are being authenticated as admin and you are viewing the request. So there is generally a mechanism, for example, even in a real life in a bank, that there are security cameras that record your moves. So similarly, in a web application, in a real world application, there are logs that tracks everything, and there are alarms if something suspicious happens. So if there are no cameras, no logs, or no alarms, then anyone could enter into the bank vault, and thus anyone wouldn't have an idea that he stole all the money and run away. So that's why logging is used in real world applications to counter up the brute force attacks, and when applications don't record or alert on security relevant events, so the defenders can't detect or investigate attacks. So good logging up of the data under this counter this ability of accountability, or it could just make the attack more reversible, and failed login attempts or password changes or admin actions can then alarm the particular admin when something suspicious happens. So how this looks in a lab, let's see. So we are given the lab here. We are given a brute force scenario. Brute force means that you are iterating over a password, or you are iterating over a particular word list till something you are doing actually worked out. So here we are given a question. It looks like an attacker tried to perform a brute force attack. What is the IP of the attacker? So this is a security analyst dashboard, SIEM dashboard, and let's view. So there are multiple IPs, there are 200 requests, there are 302 requests, and there are these 5 requests that looks like a brute force and unauthorized access. So the IP is 203.0.113.45. So you're gonna submit this, and looks like they were able to gain access to an account. What is the username associated with that account? So it looks like that it was trying to access the user admin. Here you can see that it's asking in the login parameter, it's giving username admin and the password admin123. So we have let's see, we have a successful request to 200 request to the admin. Let's see there. So first let's submit that. So there are 401 requests. Okay, so there is this 200 request as well. So it means it was accessing the super secret admin stuff, and it was given a get request. So we're gonna enter admin, and then we're gonna give, so what it was exactly, super secret. So there were more the MLE password test. It looks like a real world breach scenario or a real world brute force scenario. And admin password 123. Then it's a post request. Okay, so 200 post request. So this was successful and the user was authenticated as admin. So super secret was it was trying to access, so this one would be the answer. And then concluding all of this is we completed our task 5 as well. So this proves up how logging and alerting is generally important, and you need to make sure that in a real world scenario you are logging everything, so that when an anomaly happens you can just view down the logs and identify who did what, so you could have a better security. Okay, so now jumping onto the task 6, we have the conclusion. So you have just worked through the essentials of identity authentication, authorization, and accountability in web application, and how it can cause the several of categories of vulnerabilities discussed in the OWASP Top 10 2025 Open Source Web Application Security Project. I hope you enjoyed this room, and if you enjoyed this, do give a like and do leave a comment if you didn't understand any topic, or do give a subscribe, and thanks for watching.